Kalala Yahweh, Boa Shumamasha, Yawasha, Shemayasha, brother Yahweh, Alahaya Nawa, Kadabamashbaka. Shalom, may peace, serenity, and prosperity be multiplied unto you all. All right, I want to go ahead and start this fresh lesson in honor of the Feast of Dedication. Now, as we observe these 8 days of joyous remembrance of the rededication of the temple, as we praise and serve and thank Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh with joyfulness and gladness of heart. I just wanted to give a few tips in keeping the Feast of Tabernacles, Feast of Dedication. I don't know where that came from, Salat, but the Feast of Dedication. Now, during this time, you should be enjoying yourselves as we meditate on the book of 1st and 2nd Maccabees. However, if you're with your congregation, I know you're doing your thing with your congregation. You all are having your gatherings and, going over the scriptures appropriately. If it's just you and your family, you should be doing something similar. Play the truth music, play worship music, and just enjoy each other's company. And eat good food. That's one of the foundations of having a feast, is enjoying food, right? That's the whole foundation of a feast, food. So be sure you're enjoying some meals during these 8 days. Don't do it glutton. Don't be in gluttony. Don't be gluttonous, but make sure you do your due diligence to eat some decent meals, some very good and hearty meals, and cook it at the house. Between you and your family, just cook it in the house and enjoy each other's company. Just make the best of it. I would say not to meditate on anything that's negative. If you enjoy crime thriller movies, leave off from that for these 8 days, right? Fill your spirit with things that are joyful. Instead of watching some crime thrillers, watch some comedy. Laugh, enjoy yourself, right? Stay away from horror movies. Don't watch anything that's demonic or anything of that nature. Leave all that alone. But first and foremost, you should be studying these scriptures, specifically 1st Maccabees and 2nd Maccabees. Now you may ask, why are you in Galatians chapter 3? Well, Galatians chapter 3, verse 28, as we see here, this is a widely misinterpreted verse. And it has everything to do with the Feast of Dedication. This is from the book of Galatians, chapter 3, verse 28, an epistle of Aksha'al, a.k.a. Paul. And it reads, "There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Mashiach Yahushua." So the reason why this particular scripture is important is because it's rooted in what happened during the Maccabees. And we're going to get further into it here. Without further ado, let me go ahead and get to the history piece of this. We're going to understand what Paul was talking about here. Neither Jew nor Greek. Let's figure this out here, right? So during the reign of Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, right? We're gonna learn about Antiochus. So Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes was a king of the Seleucid Empire who reigned from 175 to 164 BC. All right. So we know Akshaal, the Paul, during his time was after Mashiach, after Christ. That's what BC stands for. It stands for before Christ, before Mashiach. So we know Paul and his writings took place after. It took place after the Messiah. So here we're looking into history, okay? So he is known for his aggressive Hellenization. His aggressive Hellenization policies and the persecution of the Jews, our ancestors, which led to the Maccabean revolt. Okay? Furthermore, an overview of Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes. Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes was the king of the Seleucid. I just screwed all that up. I completely butchered that. Seleucid Empire from 175 BC until his death in 164 BC. He was born around 215 BC and was the son of Antiochus III the Great. His reign is marked by significant events, including military campaigns and cultural policies. Key events during his reign. Near conquest of Egypt, Antiochus attempted to expand his territory by invading Egypt, achieving some victories, but ultimately withdrawing due to Roman intervention. War against Ptolemy. His conflicts with the Ptolemaic kingdom were significant as he sought to control Egypt, which was a major power in the region. So not only did this guy Hellenize our ancestors and persecuted our ancestors and killed a lot of them, he also caused havoc out in Egypt. Cultural policy. So we're going to get more into the Hellenization. And the Hellenization was the dogma or the forceful adoption of Greek customs and lifestyles. So Hellenized Jews were those Jews who completely forsook their culture and the laws, statutes, and commandments that their fathers were commanded to obey for the ways of the Greeks. That's what Hellenization is. A key example of Hellenization is Yahweh's name that was changed through Hellenization, Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is a Hellenized name. It's Greek. We know that the Messiah was Hebrew of the tribe of Judah. So that's how we know that's a prime example of Hellenization there. That image and that name is a result of Hellenization. All right. So that gives you a better understanding of what this Hellenization was that Antiochus imposed against the Jews. Furthermore, Hellenization efforts. Antiochus promoted Greek culture and institutions throughout his empire, aiming for cultural uniformity. This included establishing Greek cities and encouraging the worship of Greek gods. All right, so it's a complete, it's colonization before colonization was a thing, okay? This is ancient colonization that we're talking about here. That's what Hellenization is. It's the root of colonization. Persecution of the Jews. His aggressive policies against Judaism led to widespread unrest. He outlawed Jewish practices such as circumcision and desecrated the Jewish temple by erecting a statue of Zeus and sacrificing pigs. Now, you know the world's going to call it Jewish, but we all know they were the Jews. They were the true Jews that he's talking about here. It wasn't the people that we know of today that fit the category of Jewish. It was the Jews. All right? So, to give y'all a better example or a better picture of what's going on here, we state that. Legacy and impact. Antiochus IV is often remembered as a tyrant, particularly in the history of Jews. Actions sparked the Maccabean Revolt, a significant uprising that ultimately led to the establishment of an independent Jew state. His legacy is complex as he is viewed both as a ruler who attempted to unify his empire and as a persecutor of the Jews. Okay, so we know that Antiochus Epiphanes, a wicked ruler of the kingdom of the Greeks, was a huge factor to what Paul was talking about in Galatians chapter 3. All right, we know that much. Now that we have a historical overview, let's get further into it. So we're going to go back to the scriptures, and we're going to go to First Maccabees, and we're going to go to chapter 1. So after Alexander the Greek's reign, Antiochus Epiphanes took over, and we'll read from there, right? So First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 7. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule, everyone in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them. Many years and evils were multiplied in the earth. And there came out of them a wicked root. And there came out of them a wicked root. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome. And he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Okay? So not only was he the prime factor in Hellenization, you also had Israelites who were wicked themselves that willingly converted to the ways of the Greek for their own advantage. Verse 11 states that in those days went there out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we had had much sorrow. Verse 12, so this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. So they got that license in exchange of dropping their heritage of being Jews, dropping their heritage of being Israelites to become Greeks. That's what happened here. All right. And it says here, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen. So they are putting profane practices into the land. That place of exercise is what we know now as gymnasiums. And during that time, they used to do their exercises in the nude among each other. So it was very profane. All right. I covered that a while ago. I covered that, I believe, sometime last year or the year before. I think it was last year when I did a whole lesson on that. All right. It's in the archives on this channel. So, you just dig through it and you'll find the history behind that. However, verse 15, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen, and they were sold to do mischief. So these Israelites sold themselves out to become Greeks. They adopted all the ways of the Greeks, from their culture to their pagan gods. And that's still going on to this day. Okay? Still going on to this day. And to get back to Galatians chapter 3 and verse 28, I just want to prove a point here, right? Speaking of these same wicked Israelites, okay? From these same wicked Israelites that have adopted the ways of the heathen and sold themselves out to do mischief. We're gonna highlight this with Galatians chapter 3, verse 28. Okay? We're gonna point something out here. So one thing that's very hypocritical and is a prime indicator of one of these wicked Israelites selling out, wicked Israelites who have been Hellenized to Edom's Christianity. They completely misconstrue Galatians chapter 3, verse 28 to defend such heathenism. So they will use this as a fighting point or an objection or a rebuttal to include Esau into the business of the Israelites. Okay? And this is how hypocritical and wicked it is that proves that they're defending their Hellenization. Right? They're defending their Hellenization because they're only talking about Edom anytime they go to this. Completely forsaken, right? Because they make this as a talking point for the Gentiles. But they do this to defend their oppressor. Yeah, they use Galatians chapter 3, verse 28 to defend their oppressor. And the Nicolaitan doctrine that we know of as modern Christianity. So they'll use this and completely forsake the African. They completely forsake the Asian. They completely forsake the Indian, the Arab. They completely forsake all these other nations to offend their oppressor, the head of the Nicolaitan doctrine, Idumea. So anytime you hear one of them run to this, that's what they're doing. They're defending Hellenization. Okay? And any Gentile who runs to this is also practicing replacement theology. Okay? That's what's going on here. We just read the history of Antiochus Epiphanes from an AI overview, all right? And we just read them in the Bible as well, highlighting the things that he did, some of the things that he did, you know. I'm gonna have to have a part two of this because we're already at 20 minutes and I don't want to make this too long. But, you know, that's what I wanted to point out here. This is how Paul was talking about neither Jew nor Greek, because you had Israelites at that time, right? After Mashiach, from an instance that happened way before Mashiach of Hellenization, where Israelites forsook their culture, forsook their heritage to be called Greeks. That carried over for hundreds of years later. Okay? That carried over for a very long time. That carried over for a long time, even from before Mashiach to after Mashiach, where we have Paul speaking on the account, neither Jew nor Greek. He was speaking of the Israelites. He wasn't speaking of the Idumean Greeks. He was speaking of those Israelites who gave up their heritage to call themselves Greeks, that were waking up and coming back to their heritage at that time. Yeah, yeah. It's already been written. It's already been written. Let me prove that to you all. It's already been written. We're going to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12. So it says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Verse 2, ye know that ye were Gentiles, carried away unto those dumb idols, even as ye were led. So we just read about Hellenization. We just read about one of the components of Hellenization was serving pagan gods of the Greeks. Now we know those pagan gods of the Greeks were idols. All right. So here we have Akshael speaking to those Israelites who considered themselves Corinthians, right? They considered themselves citizens of Corinth. He's speaking to them. Those who identified as Greeks at one point in time, and now they came back to the truth and to their heritage, which is how Paul is talking about, ye know that ye were Gentiles. You were Gentiles. Now you're no longer Gentiles. And that goes the same for a lot of us. You know, before you came into this truth, before you knew your biblical heritage, before you understood your nationality as far as what the Most High recognizes you as versus what the oppressor recognizes you as, during the time before you came into this light, into this truth, you functioned as a Gentile. You functioned as a heathen. You, me, and everybody else. I myself was once a heathen because I did not live by my biblical heritage. Neither did you. At one point in time, we were heathens. We lived as heathens. We act as heathens. We talked as heathens. We identified ourselves as heathens. Now, we're no longer that. We're no longer Gentiles. So at this time, when Paul wrote this epistle in verse 2, he was speaking of those same Israelites that had came to the light like you and I have present day, this moment. Be on the lookout for part two. May peace, serenity, and prosperity be multiplied unto you all. Shalom.